Greetings ladies and gents, and welcome to this latest narration of the web series The Survivor Becomes a Dungeon. If you're new to the series, there is a playlist listed down below in the description. Over the next month, all series from this channel will be moved over to another channel, my series channel. And then going forward, they will all be on there. So if you are interested in series and or want to support me, please head over there and hit the subscribe button. And while you're at it, if you like this channel, hit the subscribe button here. Don't worry, I won't be doing the YouTube stuff for too much longer, just until the other channel's off the ground. Anyways, on to the story. Chapter 49. The flight was relatively uneventful, with only brief breaks over the course of a few hours to make sure that the entire flock of scouts was still together. Though, before long, the destination came into view along the horizon. Jack had been here before, and it was one of the many people places that were on the far fringes of Vitmori's territory. Since Vitmori originally sent him off to find food and seeds, he made it a personal task of his to at least visit a few of these places in all directions. While he hadn't found any people places to the far south, he did find a very large lake that stretched out far in all directions in front of him. To the north, he found a few people places that had something like Vitmori's garden room, much bigger and outside, unlike Vitmori's. Each people place had walls of stone surrounding most of the buildings, though some of the buildings were outside the stone walls and were accompanied by open-air garden rooms. Each of the northern people places had the same kind of symbols on the stone walls and seemed to encompass the longest stretch of Vitmori's fringed territory. Between the people places were small stone towers with armored people patrolling the land, much like Lugosi and his wolves. So whoever runs these people places had a much larger territory than Vitmori currently had. Still, they didn't seem to approach Vitmori's land, so he had nothing to report. The far east and west fringe territories had similar styles of stone-walled people places, though the symbols on the walls were distinctly different. So Jack could guess that other masters ran them than the northern people places. Regardless, this people place looked much like the others from a distance, Jack following along after the messenger hawk as they soon flew over the stone walls without fuss. Jack mentally orders his birds to disperse and take positions around the people place while he personally follows after the messenger, stopping short as he finds a perch on a tree between a few of the buildings. The messenger swoops down to an open seated area. From what Jack could gather, the bird touches down at a table with a black-furred catkin woman in black leather armor and a nicely dressed young human woman with vibrant pink hair. The human woman seemed to smile brightly at the bird as she clapped her hands together. "Aha! Mishy is back!" she gushed as she reached out and tickled the bird under its beak, Mishy cawing out cheerfully enough with the flutter of the wings. The young woman continued to dote on the bird for a few moments before the catkin woman cleared her throat. "Ma'am, there's a letter in the harness." The young woman perked up again as she peered around the back of her dear bird and scratched its beak again. "Ah, good work, Mishy. You found them already. Good bird, such a good bird," she mused affectionately, getting distracted momentarily, before the catkin woman cleared her throat again. Right, she murmured, half apologetically, as she reached around behind the bird, Mishy standing perfect as still as the young woman pulled the scroll out of the harness. Unfurling it, she began looking it over. "Oh my, looks like father's business partners had some trouble. Poor things," she said, seemingly sincere as she passed the scroll over to the catkin woman. The catkin woman's green eyes scanned the scroll thoughtfully as she nodded intently. "I see," is all she really says before handing the scroll back to her ward. "What are your orders, ma'am?" The young woman smiles brightly as she affectionately massages Mishy's head with a finger. "We ought to help them, of course. We can't just leave the poor things out there in the ghastly forest. Perhaps we can also bring them back," she pondered aloud as she now flashed a toothy grin. "Wouldn't father be proud if we brought them all along for a visit?" The catkin woman flicked her tail thoughtfully before giving the young woman a nod. "I believe that we can manage that, ma'am. We can head out after breakfast." The young woman let out a sweet little laugh, catching the attention of some young men nearby who watch her curiously for a moment. That is, until the sharp glare from the catkin woman makes them turn away. "This is going to be just brilliant, Dahlia. I can't wait to go back home after all of this in this sad little backwood. Oh, I wonder if they'll have any pretty toys with them. I just can't wait for tomorrow now," she gushed enthusiastically before sipping on a tea and continuing to dote upon Mishi. Having seen enough, Jack takes to wing, leaving one of his crew birds behind to maintain watch as the flock begins to leave a chain of scouts as per Whitmore's instructions. Ferodius' point of view. So you're really from another world? I mean, you always seemed odd, and I truly mean that in the most loving way, but another world, he added quickly, his tail curling thoughtfully. Historietta appeared rather bashful. She had thought about this conversation for years now, but she honestly never thought that she would be having it, nor that it would be this way. Yes, I come from a world called Earth, just like Whitmore, she explained as she scratched the back of her neck, not too sure what else to say. I need to know what happened on my homeworld. We as a people were aware of things called zombies, but at least in my time, they were just stories. Imaginary monsters that were great material for survival fantasies. She bit her lip, her nerves getting to her as she began messing with a strand of hair around the base of her neck. Anyways, I want to know. I need to visit him and hear his story directly. Please, darling, I swear I'll be careful. Ferodius's ears twitched and flicked thoughtfully, glancing over at Historietta and looking away. He deeply considers the revelation before him. In the end, there was one thing he needed to say to her as he looked to Historietta once more and stood from his seat at the desk. He walks around his desk, coming up beside Historietta, who averts her gaze anxiously. He reaches out, his soft, fluffy hand tenderly taking up her chin as he coaxed her to look up at him as he gazed intently into her eyes. Tori, I just want you to know that I don't care where you came from or whoever you used to be. You're my empress and the love of my life, he said as he leaned in and lovingly touched her forehead to hers, gently nuzzling as a murr rumbled in his throat. If you want, we can talk about this more once you get back. Historietta couldn't help but feel her cheeks blush, even if they had been more than intimate for many years. Oh, Farah, you're too good for me, she whispered haughtily back to Ferodius as she gazed into his eyes in return. I promise I'll tell you about everything when I get back, she murmured back as she affectionately kissed Ferodius's furry chin. Pulling back, she smiled some more as she fiddled with a strand of hair. I suppose I ought to start packing. I've got a long walk ahead of me, she said, offering a sheepish smile. Ferodius's tail flicked as he flashed a toothy grin and stood tall again before taking a couple of steps back and sitting on his desk. A walk? Do you think I'm going to let my darling Empress walk? Of course not. This is now an imperial visit we're dealing with. No, I'll be making some arrangements. You'll be taking an escort of Drake Wardens instead of the carriage that Revire and Rheonum were originally going to take. I'll, of course, inform the two of them about the change in plans. I want you safe, after all, and I'll spare no expense in that endeavor. They then smiled thoughtfully as he scratched his furry chin thoughtfully. And that gives me an idea for yet another gift for Whitmore, he considered as his ears waggled with delight. The very idea that we can form an alliance with a person with the influence and power of a dungeon core. The idea is ridiculous as the idea that there could be other worlds, but there we are, with both truths as real as you or me. He chuckled softly as he rubbed the back of his neck. I do think this alliance is already a done deal, darling, but do please keep an ear out to see if there's anything else we can do. As Revire said, he wants to trust and needs to be trusted. His tail curled as he tilted his head a bit. I'm sure as kin of the same world, he'll be more willing to connect with you. If Revire is anything to go by, I'm certain he'll be as eager to meet you as you are to meet him. He considered as he flashed his confident smile. Historietta smiled as she nodded, standing as she stepped closer to Ferodius before draping her arms around him. You're the best, Farah, my love. I'll be missing you every day, she mused affectionately before pulling away and heading towards the door, casting one more look at Ferodius and stepping out. Ferodius sighed wistfully, already missing her, as he scratched his throat absently. He then stood as he walked around and settled back into his seat, leaning back and closing his eyes after staring at the ceiling for a moment. Another world, huh? What a woman, he mused with a warm smile as his tail curled and flicked. End of story. There is a new legend on the horizon. Blueberry Cat has taken the T6 Patreon spot. Thank you very much, and I'm sure that I speak for everyone when I say that. I would just like to thank our T5 members, Lord Azrekahl, AmbroseKTal, Quantem Wensday, Dragzoon W.R.E, Blueberry Cat, Cam Maxwell, Casper Arnholtz, Bushmaster 177, and Leslie 517. Thank you very much.